Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Labonte. This begins our 13th hour of studying English conversation patterns. The template you find on the left can be found in the teacher's guide at the website under the file entitled When. Today we begin to study for the first time complex sentences. We have 9 patterns that we learn in this hour. With all of these complex patterns, complex sentences, it doesn't make any difference if the pattern goes in the front or the end of the sentence. When I eat, I sit when I eat, they are exactly the same. That is true of all of the patterns on this page. With 4 of these patterns, there is an abbreviated form that you see here on the right. It can only be used if the subject of the sentence is the same on both sides of the pattern. If the subjects are different on each side of the sentence, for example, when I study, he talks, this shorter form cannot be used. The short form is only used when the subject of both parts of the sentence are the same. With the pattern every time, a common variation of this is whenever and a sentence. Whenever I go, every time I go, they are exactly the same. With the pattern if, there is a very complicated form of this with the subjunctive that we'll learn in a separate lesson. So in this part of learning the patterns, I do not cover if he came, I would go. I would save that to a special 1-hour session by itself. So when you're using if, I would make examples very simply. If he comes, I will go. If he comes, I want to meet him. With even though, another common variation of this is even if. I want to go even if she doesn't go. I want to go even though she doesn't want to go. They are the same. With while, you will find another variation with as and a sentence. While I ate, I talked. As I ate, I talked. They are identical. So even though, as I said before, even if is identical. Every time I, whenever in a sentence are identical. These are variations of these commonly used patterns you find on the left. Instead of verb ing, always takes a verb ing, never a sentence. Instead of I go is never used. It's always instead of going. When practicing these patterns, I start from the top, just go to the bottom with them. Initially, I keep it very simple. For example, when you go, do you drive? Before you go, do you study? If you go, do you meet her? As soon as you go, do you talk to her? So you make it very simple at the beginning, just changing the pattern. After that, you can begin to incorporate some of the patterns that we've learned here. So, for example, before you go, do you want to study? After you go, do you feel like eating? As soon as he comes, do you want to leave? If she comes, are you thinking of talking to her? If you go, will you quit smoking? You just once again, we're reinforcing the patterns that we learned to keep them fresh in the student's mind and helping them to get used to using the patterns, reinforcing so that they gain confidence. In the review questions that you'll find in this part of the pattern, you will see many of these patterns being multiply used. There's a great review on the patterns that we've already studied along with these patterns. In the 12th hour, we learned indirect discourse, and you can, combine these. For example, when you saw him, did you tell him to go? Every time you see him, do you tell him not to smoke? Even though he was tired, did you ask him if he could help? So, once again, we're weaving in and out of the patterns with the student to see where their weaknesses are to help them. We're asking questions in the past, the present, and the future, both in the positive and the negative, to see if the student is totally familiarized with the patterns. If they're making mistakes, their mistakes will be consistent, and as you ask the questions, you'll be able to find out their weaknesses very quickly. Thank you very much.